Welcome back to the Reset Mantra with me, Sabeena Maharjan. I am thrilled to have you here. If you're just joining this, please make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've joined us before and you're enjoying the podcast, please leave me a review wherever you're listening. It helps other people find our little community. Today, we're talking about gratitude. It is one of the terms we hear all the time, especially if you're interested in self-improvement. It's that simple, yet powerful practice that can really reset and transform our lives. It is more than just saying thank you. It is a way of shifting our mindset. And according to my guest, it is about connecting with our inner light. I am excited to dive deeper into this topic with Sohale Sizar, the founder of Soul. With 15 years of experience in meditation and gratitude and an inspiring journey as an entrepreneur, Sohale is on a mission to help others illuminate their lives through the daily practice of gratitude. We have a very special guest in our show today, Sohale Sizar, the founder of Soul. And Sohale is the very first male guest in our show. So welcome, Sohale. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be the first. I feel like that's one of those things inside my resume and my heart, the fact that I could be the first male guest for a podcast. So it's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Sydney.
To kick things off, when we talk about gratitude, what are we actually referring to? It sounds simple, but it can be a tricky concept to pin down. So how do we define it?
There are multiple different definitions based off of how you see it. At its core, the most simplistic is that it's feelings of appreciation. You just feel thankful for what you get to have. But if you go another level deeper, it's also the realization of abundance in your life that you get to have. A lot of times, and this is like a technique I know in CBT and cognitive behavioral therapy, this reframing that I get to have whatever that may be in my life. And then lastly, from a spiritual perspective, so, we talked about just from a feelings, right? Just like a higher simplistic, and there's a psychological angle to this of reframing abundance in your life. And there's also a spiritual element to it as well, which is the realization of the recognition of mercy. Mercy from, you can call it universe, God, whatever you want to call it, but this idea that my existence is ultimately a testament of abundance and being full, and I'm being thought about. And gratitude is recognizing that. I like to say that gratitude is tapping into the divine root that inspired all that is. And so when we're grateful, we're basically tapping into that root that inspires life.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And I think, like you said, that gratitude is definitely a response, right? About how we perceive it and how we appreciate and value things. And I loved how you talked about the spiritual aspect of gratitude. And I know previously you've also mentioned that, gratitude is one of the powerful remedies for the heart and mind. I'm curious to know, what do you mean by that?
Yes. So, the research on gratitude is sensational. It's about 30 years or more of very, very strong research. And the research shows that I would say this is better than any pill that the FDA could probably approve. If I said to you, hey, Sabeena, I got a pill, I got something for you. It's not FDA approved, but we have research that shows that it improves quality of sleep, that it boosts your immune system, that it even improves your quality of your skin, boosts cardiovascular health, improves joy or increases joy, happiness, and contentment, reduces anxiety and burnout, even improves pain tolerance. And there's no side effects to it. Would you like this drug? Everyone would say, sign me up and get me an extra batch while you're at it. And so there's incredible amount of research about the power of gratitude. And what I mentioned to you is all backed by research. From a scientific perspective, when we are grateful, when we practice gratitude, there are neurotransmitters that are released into our bloodstream that impact our mood. They impact our feelings of love, and they also give a sense of reward. So dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin are released when we are more grateful. And so we feel more loving, more happy, and more joyful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, there are tons of positive
Yeah.
impacts in our health, and all backed by science as a result of gratitude. I mean, who could have thought a simple thing as gratitude could have such an immense effect in our health, right? Positive
Yeah.
effect. And, I've realized that some people, when we talk about gratitude, some people are just naturally more
Yeah.
grateful. However, others may be a little less grateful. Um, in your opinion, why do you think that is as
Yeah, I
so?
mean, I'll go straight to the research and lessen my opinion on this one, because what we know, there's a lot of good research that shows that, there are a number of variables that impact how grateful one is. It's your upbringing, it's your
Mm.
personality, it's your genetics is a key part of it as well. So there's a number of different variables that play a role. And for example, there's some really fascinating research that some people who have a functional variation of this gene called CD38 have, impacts how grateful they are, right? Because CD38 is related to oxytocin and that system. And oxytocin is what we see when, the neurotransmitter that is released when we experience gratitude. And so your genetics can even impact how grateful you feel. Now that's not to despair, of course. That's not to despair, because there are other variables that you can implement, or other variables that you can manage in order to create a grateful habit. But Sabeena, to be totally real with you, we all know that gratitude is good for us. We get it. I think the question is, why are we just not as grateful as human? Some of us, just generally, why is that hard to build that habit? To me, the real question comes by, how do we see ourselves? If we see ourselves as
Mm.
full and abundant, and that we get to have an experience of being human, the conversation is very different than if we're just happen to be human and you happen to be experiencing things. And that is a whole soul journey of self-discovery and taking agency for the narratives of who we are.
It's amazing how, I was talking to you about this earlier, how a simple practice such as gratitude could now be backed by research and science. And, we have all this evidences of how it impacts our health positively. And I'm interested to learn a little bit more about, so as your company, Soul, right? Through your company, you are on a mission to help people cultivate this practice of gratitude. Um, Tell us a little bit more about what kind of approach do you use to help people so that they can cultivate the practice of gratitude? And I know we touched a little bit on how some people genetically can be wired to be a little less grateful. How can people then sort of, rewire their brain to now naturally be more grateful? Tell us a little bit more about how you do what you do in your through your company.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, a classmate of mine said, "Sohale, you should start a gratitude practice." I, bought a journal like 100 million other people in the United States, and I failed. After 5 days, I failed. I said, I'm just busy. I didn't get to it. I missed it. So what I started doing is I started writing an email to myself and schedule sending it. I'd write an email and say what I'm grateful for, come back in my inbox. I'd send it, reply to myself, schedule, send it. I do it for 3 years. And at the time, I was a CEO of another company, and I was a part of a lot of founder groups where we talk about how to manage our emotions and how to have more joy and happiness and manage burnout and stress and all of that. And so I mentioned, hey, this technique has been helping me. Folks wanted to use this. And that company that I was CEO of ends up becoming acquired. And I got the opportunity to work on this. And so I looked at the data. This side project ends up becoming something more. And I look over the data of the last 3 years where I, converted, and I noticed that there was this pattern happening of nudges. And so I analyzed the pattern, and long story short, Soul sends spontaneous nudges of text messages to you of gratitude prompts. and you respond right to it. Now, why does this matter? To your question, for those who want to build a habit, it has to be easy. I mean, if you read any research about it, it has to start small and it has to be easy. And it has to incorporate with what we are already familiar with. Who wants to download another app? I didn't want to download another app. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to be carrying my journal around with me everywhere I go. So what I did was I took that data, put it into a text message tool. So SMS, WhatsApp, iMessage, you spontaneously get a nudge. The spontaneity is so important because it creates this anticipation. You just don't know when you're going to get a prompt. And you reply to the text message. You reply to a text message. That's it. And you can reply with voice memo, photo, video, you name it. So if you don't like to type, you don't even have to type. I mean, you can talk. It reduces the load, the cognitive load that it takes to build that habit. And what we see is people are building that habit because we started small and their lives are changing. I know folks who, we have a number of testimonials of folks saying, listen, I started this tool. I saw myself as, I'm thinking of one individual in particular, or one testimonial in particular. He's like, I saw myself simply as a photographer. And I started this practice. And through this practice, I now see myself as a creative director working with some of the greatest people in the world with creative projects and art. Why? Because his image of himself changed to one of abundance. Sabeena, I could just go on forever about this, but one of the things I love about Soul is our vision is to empower individuals to access that inner self. And if you're able to build a gratitude habit, you can do that. And as a result, we're also able to give personalized recommendations to you about practitioners, insights about yourself, how you can find even more inner joy, local places, events that are relevant to you, and ultimately inner peace.
When you talked about you wanted to make this simple for people, right?
And for myself.
Clearly. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that, because for me, if I have to figure out a lot of time understanding a specific tool, app, habit, I would rather just give up if it's simple. And often the simple things that's created, that those take the most hard work, right, to make it simple. So I think that sounds an amazing tool that you've built. I think it's a topic that we hear all the time, right? Like growing up, like our grandparents are grateful to a lot of stuff, like be the food we eat or the sunshine, rain, cool breeze of air in the summer. But it's just that a lot of people, including me, I wasn't intentional and mindful about, this gratitude is such a powerful tool. And as simple as it sounds, it just have such an immense effect. So I'm like, okay, I want to learn more about, what inspired to come up with this whole concept and learn a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So for me, similarly, I was raised with this idea that I knew gratitude was good for you. I knew it was meaningful. Thanksgivings were a good time to practice it. And actually, I was a casual sharer of gratitude. I look at some of my older journals, I scribble and I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. But it was actually 3 years ago when a classmate of mine said to me, Sohale, you got to start a gratitude journal. And I said, well, why? And so she starts selling me on gratitude. And she told me that there's so much incredible research that shows that it increases happiness, joy, contentment, improves longevity, boosts your immune system, improves quality of sleep. You got to do it, and we're going to be accountability buddies. And so I did it, and I did it for 5 days, and then I failed. And like 100 million other Americans, I got a journal and I did it for a little bit and I failed at that process. And so I felt a bit of guilt. I said, I know that this is important. I can feel that it's important. I even in that 5 days, I appreciated it. What can I do to actually build this habit? I want to build this habit. So I went to my email. I wrote an email to myself. I send it. I wrote in that email what I'm grateful for. And it came back into my inbox. And I replied to that email. And then I send it again, and it came back again in my inbox. And I ended up doing that for 3 years, and it transformed my heart, my mind, and who I am.
Oh, wow. That was a pretty cool idea to send yourself the email.
Yeah, I needed a way to make it work. And what was beautiful is when I come back in my inbox, I would see all the other entries I wrote. And one of the things that I said to myself, and I think this is important to communicate for everyone, is that any amount that's shared is good enough. Even one word is a win. If I feel I want to write a sentence, I write a sentence. If I want to feel like I want to do a paragraph, I do a paragraph. It doesn't really matter. That level of mercy actually allowed me to keep going.
I love that. That's really powerful. I've I've had something similar when I was working on the self-talk that I had with myself, which I wasn't aware. And then when I started to really become aware about the way I talk to myself, and what I really started was I had a lot of negative self-talk about, how we are always there to cheer up a friend. But then when it comes to loving and appreciating ourselves, the first we're our biggest critic, as they all say. So that's when I was like starting to write everything down, jot all the thoughts that I have. I think it's called thoughts download. And then I'm literally going word by word, or if it's a sentence, I'm adding a opposite counterpart to say, to add a positive uplifting sentence or a word. And then I think that's how I became hooked with this power of being grateful to ourselves, to the little efforts that we do in our daily life, which we often overlook. And as simple as it sounds, the amount of ripple effect that it has as a person, as a friend, as a colleague at work, I was just amazed. I couldn't believe that it could really change this habit of being grateful. And, it really had immense effect in my personal life as well. So I think it's a great tool. And I know I went through your website, and I was really curious to know about how, when you say backing spirituality based on AI. So I thought that was pretty cool use of technology. And I think you do have a background of, technical entrepreneurship. So I think that's a really impactful community that you've built. I'm so grateful that you have provided this space for a lot of people to come together and learn this tool.
I appreciate that. And like 2 points to what you just shared. So the first one is that gratitude, for those things that we struggle to be grateful for, it's actually a messenger. It's a messenger or a thread that we can follow to understand why. So, for example, there are certain things that I was afraid to share gratitude for. And I was afraid that I was going to lose them. Or there's a fear of not getting what you need. And so really what it does is also the lack of gratitude illuminates some of the self-limiting beliefs or narratives we have in our own mind. Why can't we feel more gratitude for certain things that we have, right? A lot of people ask that and they wonder. And there's a lot of elements or variables that lead to a feeling of gratitude, by the way. It's like amazing. Obviously, there's personality trait, there's cultural background. Certain cultures are, express gratitude in different ways, of course. There's upbringing. But then there's also genetics. I mean, who knew? So there's a gene, it's called CD38, and a functional variation of that gene impacts oxytocin being released. And oxytocin is the love hormone, right? And so gratitude, the research of this is so cool. The gratitude research shows that it releases, so one who is grateful releases these particular neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And so oxytocin is the love, is a love hormone. Serotonin is in the gut and represents mood. And then dopamine is the reward system. So every time when those people who scroll Instagram or variable rewards, that sparks of finding and winning something, that's triggering dopamine. Gratitude does all three of these. So certain people have a functional variation of this gene. Their oxytocin and the amount that is secreted is actually different than some others. And so there's all these different variables that ultimately play a role. Of course, that's not the only variable. If you feel like, oh, I'm just not a grateful person, Well, you can learn to be grateful, right? There are other ways that you can experience that joy and happiness. I made sure that I didn't want it to be conversational. Like, those AI bots that you talk to? It's like, give me a break. You don't know really who I am. You're just AI. But so we've been
Right.
honest about it. You get a nudge, it's loving, it's a prompt, you're writing to yourself. But I've been very, very careful and cognizant of the language that's used. And so when you reply, you get this loving message back. And I think it's so important to feel loved. And and
Mm.
um, and that's what we seek to do, really ultimately.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. You've put a lot of research into this tool. I understand that you yourself are, have practiced meditation and gratitude for 15 years. What's the biggest similarity do you see between those two tools?
Self-knowledge, right? I think at the core of it is the answer of who am I? And with meditation, for me, it's faith based. And so for me, the question becomes of how am I ultimately embodying divinity in my attitude? Because what's the point of faith, Sabeena, if we don't have actions around it, right? Like you can call yourself whatever you want, but if you're missing kindness and love and compassion to those around you, including yourself, what's the point? And so meditation for me has been an opportunity to understand really who I am. And boy, did I underestimate in that journey. Gratitude is the same thing. Gratitude almost feels like an extrinsic practice versus meditation being an intrinsic one. Versus meaning that with gratitude, sometimes you're looking outwardly and you're seeing around yourself what you get to have. With meditation, it's more you're going inwardly and quieting the self more in order to allow the space for joy, truth, silence, peace to fill the space. So that is really the key element. And what's beautiful is if you go to any spiritual tradition, if you go to Hinduism, you go to Islam, Christianity, any ancient tradition, they talk about gratitude. Even on our site, when we do this intentionally, we have a quote from Anne Frank. She's like, every time I go to bed, I say, thank you, God, something along those lines. Quote from Paramahansa Yogananda, a quote from Rumi, you name it, because the world's luminaries have all said that this is extremely important.
I totally agree. I grew up in a very mixed culture where in religion where my parents followed Hinduism, my grandparents, Buddhism, my aunts, my father's sisters, they converted into Christianity. So I grew up basically celebrating all three religions, festivals.
Hopefully, you got a lot of
But
gifts.
yes, but I think the common, the unity or the similarity that I've experienced, amongst all my family is gratitude, that they all have this, used to express this sense of gratitudeness or gratefulness towards God, towards faith, or, towards life.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier, my grandparents, and I remember as a kid, they used to express their gratitude even for the food they have on the table, for the sunsets, for the sunrises, cool breeze in the summer. So I think that there's a lot to be grateful out there. One thing that I was thinking of when you were talking about meditation was, so I've been practicing this a guided meditation by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's like a 24 minutes YouTube video. And he beautifully walks you through, remind your older self what you want to make changes, and then now think about what your future self is going to look like, behave like, think like, walk like, talk like, right? So he walks you through this beautiful process of visualization. And at the end of the meditation, he tells us to express gratitude for the future self
Yeah.
ahead of the time. And in this way, you're drawing that future reality closer to you. And that's where this topic of gratitude, it's kind of pinned down in my brain now that I'm always, it's become my instant a tool to use regardless of any situation, event, whatever happens. If I'm experiencing a problem, okay, what's a good thing out of this? What can I be grateful for? Is there a right way to be grateful? Right? Is there a right time, a way to be grateful, especially when, let's say, someone's suffering from a disease, and we don't necessarily want to make people feel guilty about not being grateful, right? So, what do you think about that situation? Like, is there a right way to be grateful, and especially when someone's, going through a rough time or difficult
Yeah, I
time?
mean, there's a few points. So one, Joe Dispenza, I believe he calls gratitude vitamin G, which is a great way of putting it. It is vitamin G, and it's a vitamin we should have a lot of. And in terms of a right way, no, and that's the beauty of it. I think the minute that we make guardrails and we say it has to be this way or that way, actually makes it harder to build a habit. So there are I would reframe it and say that there are techniques that can make it deeper. If one wants to, and really, if like a couple of them, I mean, we can go on forever about those. But like, for example, when you're writing gratitude or typing gratitude, talking about the emotions, like really getting deep in the emotions and feeling the emotions as you write the emotions. It's a powerful way of doing it. A lot of folks sometimes just are cerebral versus heart oriented. And what we know actually from the data is that the heart sends 60 times stronger signals to the brain. A lot of times we think the brain is what's managing the whole system here. The heart is sending 60 times stronger signals to the brain. So it's so focus. It's so important to focus on the heart. Another element of it is, I like to say, is being very detail oriented with a scene or what you're grateful for. So sometimes, like, I'm just grateful for life. Well, if you want to make it a bit more juicy, and I'll tell you why we want to make it juicy. It's like the feeling of the pen between my hands, right? The chair, the squishiness of a pillow. I don't know.
Mm.
Because when you read back on that gratitude, it inspires those feelings of gratitude even more. And that the magic is insane, right? Because you're just bringing back those feelings again. So that's two. And then in terms of your point around, is it the right time? I personally think it's never the right time to tell anyone how they should feel. I feel like everyone should just, you have to, not you have to, but what I've learned is that emotions and feelings, everyone has a right to feel what they feel. And we have to accept that for ourselves and for others. I do get, though, sometimes this question, well, it's like, Sohale, some people, how could they be grateful they're going through so much suffering? And I think that's a misnomer. It's faulty logic, a fallacious logic, so to speak. And I'll tell you why. Because that's conflating toxic positivity with gratitude. Toxic positivity is more around this idea of denying, right? We're gonna just deny the emotions that we're feeling that may be less positive. Gratitude has nothing to do with those emotions, so to speak. It's just saying, hey, there's an opportunity to reshift your mind to see that there's something bigger, maybe, or there's another form of abundance in what you're seeing. So gratitude is not about denying, it's about seeing fully what is in front of you. And so for those people who struggle to be grateful and say, well, I'm going through all these things and being grateful, my perception a lot of times of that coming about, it can be actually a manifestation of our limiting beliefs. And I speak that for myself as well, because there are moments where I am ungrateful, and I can be more. And it's really more of a belief system that I need to improve on and continue to upgrade.
I totally believe it. I myself have been on this journey, and it seems like it's a continuous journey of working on my limiting beliefs and unlearning and relearning a lot of stuff that I've been conditioned to believe. And now that I'm more aware about the life, who I am, I've been identifying a lot of those patterns that I've been repeating, and it goes back to, how you said, those limiting beliefs, right? And certainly, like you said, we can't force gratitude, but it's about how we see things and overcoming those limiting beliefs, and then accepting gratitude as it is.
And I think being habitual about it is the key, right?
Hmm.
And building that habit. And actually, with Soul, one of the things we do, why we love text messages, because you can send one word or you can send a photo, and then it builds over time because you feel as you invest more in saying, you goes, oh wow, and one sentence becomes one paragraph, or it becomes a 2-minute voice memo to yourself, or so it builds upon itself, and that's the whole point. Well, the whole point is to build upon itself so you can really feel inner peace and joy, which is what all of us want, right? I mean, who doesn't want that?
So true. And I've realized that we often, chase those things externally,
Yes.
thinking, that so and so things will make us happy, or when we acquire certain things externally, be it materialistic or validation from someone, that will make us happy. But um, eventually, I totally agree with you that we are who we've been seeking this whole time, and we have this inner light in
Yeah.
ourselves, and it's just about the matter of knowing it and being connected and staying connected, and using those tools like gratitude and other tools to equip us better, right?
Yeah. And if one thing is that if one feels ungrateful about something, which we all have those moments, the question really to ask yourself, and I ask myself, is why?
Mm.
Why don't I feel gratitude about something? Because really, it's a massive blessing to not feel grateful about something. And why is that? I see it as a massive blessing. It's a blessing sometimes I don't like to swallow, but it's a massive blessing because it's revealing. And I said this earlier in our conversation, but I want to emphasize on it. It's revealing where we can reframe how we see our own selves. It's like, oh wow, it's a little bit of a revelation, um, that we have a certain narrative of something in our mind that probably could be more abundant oriented than scarcity oriented. So for those who feel
So
that
love.
way, like just ask yourself why, and it may open doors for you.
I totally agree with that. I think it's just a matter of that perspective shift,
Yeah,
right? That sometimes we tell ourselves the stories which isn't even real. It's just totally biased from our own perspective. And then just like you said, it requires that reframe, that reset of how we've been conditioned to do things, and getting over those limiting beliefs, and maybe practicing a little bit more gratitude in our daily life. So let me ask a very impromptu question here. What are you most grateful for today?
oh yeah, that's the easy one. um, well, I'm very grateful for the opportunity, in particular today, that I get to share this message with folks. I mean, before today, I think I had 12 or 13, 14 calls today before chatting with you. And every one of them was about telling this, and they weren't podcasts, but they were conversations with individuals who could potentially leverage gratitude, change their lives. And I'm so grateful that I get to talk to them about it. I'm even more grateful for the fact that so many of them resonate with this message. Like so many of us, we know we should be doing it, but we don't. There's a common thread of humanity in it, and I'm grateful for that common thread of humanity. And the fact that I get to do this. I get to spend my time on earth to do this and talk about this.
That's lovely. That's certainly so joyful just by listening to what you said, and then the amount of good feeling the people that you're serving are receiving. I must say that's incredible. That's really, really incredible. So Sohail, what's one thing about gratitude that I may not have asked, but people should know from your perspective that could help them practice or use gratitude as a tool to make their lives a little better, from mind, body, soul
Yeah,
perspective? Is there anything that you'd like
for
to add?
sure. Actually, it's so important in relationships. So whether that's romantic, whether that's familial, friends, um, you know, there's a lot of fear sometimes to open up and share how you feel with someone, or sometimes it seems weird, like, why are you just suddenly being nice to me, or why are you suddenly being grateful for me? But it doesn't have to be a big thing, a big conversation. It can be little, like, I'm so grateful you wear that shirt. I love it, that color. If it's to a friend or a family member or whatever, it can be little things. But we're finding that gratitude is so powerful in strengthening bonds. And that's exactly what
Mm,
oxytocin is all about, by the way. Right. And interestingly enough, we've had a lot of couples, or I've heard from a lot of couples who are using this in their relationships. So they're saying, we're using this as to start a conversation around gratitude. They get a prompt from Soul. That's the name of the tool, Soul. And they say, oh, what's your answer to that? And they have a conversation about it, and it ends up strengthening this feeling of abundance between both of them. So gratitude, yes, it's for ourselves. It's also an opportunity to deepen our relationship with those who we love.
that's so powerful. Now I can certainly relate. It's a powerful tool just to strengthen that bond. Be any relationships, right? Like family, friends, and often in romantic relationships, and often we tend to take people for granted. And we forget to express gratitude, especially with like a long-term relationship or like a people that we meet in a day-to-day life. And it's easy to just overlook, like, okay, and take things for granted. But it's important that that reminder that you have to be grateful and also express the gratitude.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely agree with you. I feel like we take sometimes love for granted, actually. Like, I'm talking about romantic love. It's something I particularly feel, um, because so many times, um, it's taken for granted, like this ability to even fall in love. For so many people, why do I talk about love? Because love for so many people is such a transformative experience. For some people, it revolutionizes their heart. They become different human beings. Um, and the opportunity to just even get to experience that, because there's people who wish to experience it, is truly a blessing. It's a little bit
That
revealing
is
about
so
me
true.
too, but we'll table that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially in social media, I hear different opinions about, love today, right? As a millennial, I must say I don't, not sure if I'll be used to with the kind of things that I hear in social media about love, because that sounds more like a partnership, okay, does this person check the box or no? But I think, at least for me, especially since last year, it's been that when I think of love, the I realized that I needed to cultivate self-love first. And it's very easy, I think, especially when you've been in a relationship, it's easy to forget about yourself, focus more on the other person, or practice
Yeah,
codependency knowingly, unknowingly. So I think when I got out of my relationship, for me, it was, this was a good reminder that I need to cultivate more
yeah,
self love, because then that becomes a seed for me to be that vibrational match for like minded people who are invested in themselves and, things like that. And again, I know I keep talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza, but one of the things he said that, okay, when you're thinking of love, like ideal love, write down all the qualities that you seek in an ideal partner, and then just become
yeah,
that. That's it. So it's simple, but people may have different needs, but I can so relate that, the gratitude and the love, and those are really powerful experiences that human beings can have. We're actually so grateful and fortunate to experience those various
yeah,
emotions.
exactly. And it's an opportunity to experience heaven on earth too. And I think this idea that we can experience joy and ecstasy, organically, um, through vitamin G, is a powerful way. And to your point around self-love, and gratitude is key to that, right? And so when you're feeling grateful, you just bring it to that relationship. So I completely agree with you. And I think it's important noting why gratitude is so important, not just for ourselves, but then ultimately for those around us, because sometimes that's our motivator too. Actually, it ends up being our motivator, to know that, I can show up better, not only for myself but for someone else as well. So yeah, I completely agree, and I empathize as a fellow millennial too. And I feel like the worst thing, the poison of gratitude, is social media. Or comparison. I actually call comparison the devil, because it really is this idea of giving a false narrative of what you don't have,
Yes.
and what you may be missing out on. I mean, those feelings are, I would say, or it's designed. I would say social media is definitely designed. We know this. There's so much research and books and everything written about this, designed to essentially invoke or inspire feelings of missing out, and therefore us trying to be a part of it and ultimately accept it. So it really taps in that insecurity of, am I enough? Right? Which many people, many people, doesn't matter, your celebrity, whatever, we know, I've talked about experiencing. And gratitude says you are. And gratitude says the life is. And that's why we started this conversation. And you asked me what's the definition of gratitude. It says it's the root, the divine root that inspired all that is. You are the inspiration. And if you were inspired to be, then you must probably be enough.
I love it. I love that. It's immensely powerful, thinking about how you mentioned about social media. It's I would say it's through social media, at least from what I've experienced, people feel more disconnected with themselves. Although they may feel connected or have that illusion of, okay, I feel connected because I see people doing things, I see likes, I see views and things like that. But I think in reality, that's really disconnecting people from themselves. And that's why I was really fascinated by when you said, okay, connecting to your inner light. And that's what I'm a big fan of too. Like, I believe that, we all have magic within ourselves. And then it actually, personally, I was underestimating this journey of self-discovery, but it's actually a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it is.
to connect to yourself and then continue to do that, right? But it's a beautiful experience too. This is something that I ask to all of my guests. And the first question is, what's one practice or habit that has been essential in helping you stay aligned to your true self?
Meditation and gratitude. The one, I would say meditation and gratitude. I can't say one or the other. It was definitely both of them.
All right. The second question. If you could share 3 ingredients to help someone reset their life, what would it be?
Okay. Well, the first one, definitely I'm going to say soul. Absolutely. And I actually, I mean it, because it changed my life. And I'm happy to gift it for a month to your audience, to try it out. They can use a promo, the word THEWORD. And they get a month on me. And what I love about it is because it actually helps to build a gratitude habit, but also it provides a mirror to you. Where are the patterns of psychological patterns that are leading you? You have word maps, that showing exactly where that's coming from in your life. Where's the gratitude coming from in your life, as well as recommendations of practitioners, workshops, events, local events, that are specific to your psychology that can help you further grow. And the resources there, we've curated some of the best practitioners, healers, therapists in the country. And so that can help people out. The second one is books and reading. There was a book I read recently called Emergence, 7 Steps to Radically Change Your Life. It's absolutely sensational. One of the top 5 books that I've ever read. I think it beautifully brings together so many ideas that we talked about in this conversation today, about narratives, about manifestation, about visualization, I mean, all of that. So that's definitely the second one. And then the third one is meditation. And I would say with that one, find what works for you. But I think the key is just to be quiet with yourself, from the craziness of the world and the text messages and the notifications and all of that. I feel like if it was a soup, and we have 3 ingredients in the soup, and the broth is love, and that's community. We need community. It's a part of being human. And so, the broth, I love this. We're making a dish here, Sabeena. It's great. So we got, so find those who you love and they love you. And whether it's friends, families, etc.
This was such a joyful conversation. I had a wonderful time. And thank you so much, Sohale. I appreciate, I'm so grateful for your time. And thank you for chatting with me.
Of course, it's truly a pleasure. And I'm grateful for the insightful questions and your sincerity.
That was such a joyful conversation. Sohale Sizar is the founder of Soul with the mission to illuminate the daily practice of gratitude for his rapidly growing online community. You can follow him on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as Bring On Soul. I'm going to put all the link to it in the show notes below because there is more than this. It's so wonderful to have someone dedicated to helping others connect with their inner light through the practice of gratitude. So definitely go check Sohale's work and his community. I'm going to put the code in the show notes as well, where you can access the Soul community. And I'm so grateful to all of you listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave me a review. It is so incredibly helpful for me, and it helps other people find our little community. I am so looking forward to next week. I'll catch you then.